I am very excited about our key interview today with Public Safety Minister Vic Toews. We've talked a lot about him on the show. I think he's been the newsmaker of the season, cracking down on foreign criminals in this country. Vic, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you very much.
I got to call you minister. I feel like I'm friendly with you, but I got to call you minister because you are a key part of this cabinet enforcing the tough on crime agenda. Tell me how you came upon the idea of getting public citizens, ordinary people in neighborhoods, to help track down these fugitives in this country. How did the idea come to you?
Well, I'm not going to deny it. It was Sun Media that raised this to the attention of my staff.
That's Tom Jackson's cover story on the subject?
Yeah, Tom Godfrey.
Excuse me, Tom Godfrey.
Tom Godfrey and also Tom Broadbeck from the Winnipeg Sun. Both had talked to me, or Tom Broadbeck had talked to me personally. Tom Godfrey talked to my staff. And essentially, when the issue was raised with me, and the objections that were raised was that while it violates privacy interests, I said, well, let's hold the presses here. What privacy interest is there in a situation where there are warrants issued as a result of a judicial process?
Yeah, so this wasn't speculation, this wasn't rumor, this was a quasi-judicial tribunal, as we say, saying go get them. Now, where did the hesitation come from? Were these departmental lawyers in the government of Canada who were saying go slow?
Well, I don't want to point any fingers, but I can say that the objections were from within government. And simply put, I said that doesn't make any sense from my understanding of constitutional law, and I did practice in that field for...
And you were the Justice Minister yourself in both Manitoba and Canada.
That's correct. And so I said, look, I think we need to move ahead on this. CBSA took a look at it and said, all right.
That's the Border Security Agency?
Yeah, Canadian Border Services Agency. And they, in fact, then came up with the list of the those implicated in war crimes as the first list, and then again Sun Media talked to me about the issue of, well, can we expand that to those who are convicted criminals? Why are we allowing them to sort of slip into the shadows? And quite frankly, there is no reason. Now, in terms of why we've released 30 or 32 on the second list, I think the issue is always how do you get the most effect out of releasing names. If you simply dump 1,400 names onto the public, will that assist in the process? Will that not? So we're trying to take a look at this. I want to do it right. I want to make this a productive but a sustainable effort.
Well, I was amazed by how quickly results came in. I mean, I thought, okay, these people are in deep, deep hiding. But within weeks, from your first list, those are the war crime suspects, I think 6 or 7 were caught right away. What do you think of that? It caught me by surprise.
I've admitted I was surprised. I was somewhat skeptical. I didn't know what the reaction would be of the local communities. And in fact, the local communities where many of these individuals are from are the ones who came forward and gave us all kinds of tips. And in fact, the other thing that this list did was show out shortcomings that we have in our system. I mean, why we aren't sharing these names with our international allies, the Americans. The Americans located one of these individuals in their detention facilities as a result of going through the list. And so I'm thinking to myself, well, at least the other names should be released to the Americans to see, can we cross-reference here? Again, we're not telling any secrets here. There's a public interest in knowing these particular individuals and seeing them leave our country and indeed leave the United States.
I think you raised a good point about the communities, the expat communities. If someone has fled here as a refugee from Rwanda, from Afghanistan, from Iraq, and then who do they see in their neighborhood but a war criminal from back home? I can imagine that brings a feeling of terror and a tremendous lack of security. And I can imagine of all the Canadians who want these criminals out, the most passionate would be from their same national communities themselves.
And can you imagine what some of these individuals feel like coming from repressive states and seeing a suspected war criminal or someone they know has been involved in horrendous deeds back home, seeing this individual apparently walking free on the street. The message that is sent, this individual has some kind of protection.
That's a great point.
And that needs to be put to rest. These individuals do not have protection. We may not have been as vigilant as we should have been, but they are not protected. We want to see them removed. We want these families to feel that they are safe here.
You know, I'm so glad that you broke out of that inertia you talked about. I mean, that's the thing about government, is that it's always riskier to change something, to do something, than to keep with the old status quo. But you took the risk here, and it's paid off handsomely. Now, you have had a few critics, and the most surprising was from a group that historically has been hunting war criminals. I'm talking about Amnesty International. Now, your colleague, Jason Kenney, also a friend of the show, sent a counterblast to Amnesty saying basically, what the hell are you doing taking the side of the war criminals against the gentlest country in the world, Canada? What do you make of, I think it's bigger than Amnesty. I think there is this official Canadian political media legal culture that sides with our enemies against our own national interests. What do you think of Amnesty and the CBC, which refused to show these people? What's going on, Vic, when institutions like Amnesty, the Bar Association, and the CBC are on the other side of the issue?
I don't know what interests they're trying to advance. I have to say, like Jason Kenney, I was always a member of Amnesty International. I thought it was something that that we should be a part of because of the backgrounds that many of us come from. I mean, I come from a background where most family was murdered in a repressive regime. And we understand what war crimes are and what they can do. And then to sort of suggest that, well, these are the kinds of individuals we want here in Canada, I find it astounding. I find it difficult to understand these individuals. Now, perhaps the CBA has an interest in maintaining
these. The Bar Association.
The Bar Association has an interest in maintaining these individuals here, and to suggest that we have these trials here in Canada clog up our courts, spend millions of dollars, and of course the upshot of it is that these individuals will be here for not just years but decades. And so there doesn't even seem to be any rationality in their objections, and Jason Kenney was right on in his comments.
You know, you raise a good point. I mean, if we keep the war criminals here and these other suspects, that's a lot of work for lawyers. So maybe that's the CBA's interest. But help me out on the CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. They have this weird policy that they seem to have cooked up from out of scratch, saying that we're not going to show these pictures on TV. We're not going to name them. But I mean, the Toronto Star, which is a very left-wing paper, they showed the pictures, and in fact, I understand it was a Star reader that turned in one of them. I just, I mean, you've commented this on publicly. Help me understand what's going on. Is it competition, Minister? Is it because we at the Sun broke the story? This is their way of differentiating themselves?
I don't know if it's competition, but the argument that was raised in respect to the first list was that these were suspected criminals and not convicted. In fact, a tribunal has determined on the civil standard.
There was a hearing on these.
That's right, and appeals. So there is nothing secret or tentative. These are conclusions. Now, I said to myself, well, all right, let's give them the benefit of the doubt on that list. But on the second list...
That's a list you announced today?
The list we announced today.
Those are 32 people. Tell me who they are.
32 individuals convicted of serious criminality.
So they had trials in a real court for a real crime.
Served time in prison. In fact, they had to serve over 6 months in prison.
Give me an example of a crime they were convicted of.
Oh, murder, sexual assault, drug trafficking.
So this isn't shoplifting or speeding. These are the capital offenses.
Serious criminality. So now I said to myself, now let's see where the CBC stands on this issue. Let's see if they will actually publish these names and the photographs, because these are actual criminals, convicted criminals. There's no question in anybody's mind here. These are individuals who served their time in prison, who were handed over to the CBSA. Within 48 hours, CBSA goes to the immigration tribunal, asks for detention. For some reason or other, the board releases them, and during the course of the lengthy proceedings, these individuals disappear.
And do you know what the CBC is going to do about this 32 name list? Have you had any response from them yet?
I did check on the internet, and what they have is the link to the CBSA website, but they're not publishing it themselves, as far as I know.
Unbelievable. Minister Vic Toews, we got to take a commercial break, but when we come back, there's so many more things we've got to talk about on The Source, where we're not shy about rounding up the bad guys. Stay right there.